Welcome all. I am Chris Racana, the Director of Success for Dr. Beasley's. Today we are in the overflow detail bay at Simon's Detail here in Chicago, Illinois, and we are here to talk about the what, the why, the where, the when, and the how of clay barring. But before we get into clay barring, please do remember to smash that like button and go ahead and tickle that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video on the Dr. Beasley's channel. So, what is a clay bar? Here's an example of a clay bar. It is an engineered mixture of resins, so it's pliable, it's soft, but the whole intention, the purpose of it is we can apply it on top of the paint using a lubrication, and we are going to mechanically rip out those contaminants that are embedded in that paint. Now, the other thing you should note about clay bars is that there's actually grades of clay. You have your fine, you have your medium, and then you have your heavy. Now, obviously our fine clay is great for kind of new car surfaces where you don't have a lot of contamination. Then you have your medium clay, which is what we're gonna be using today here on our 2015 Grand Cherokee. That's for moderate contamination and also the most commonly used clay. And then of course you have your heavy clay, which is for heavy contamination. Now, another thing to keep in mind, folks, based on the grade of clay that you are using, is how much micro marring you're going to induce on your paint. Because remember, as we're moving the clay over the surface, even though we're going to use a clay lube, we are still going to be inducing micro marring onto this paint as we're moving the clay over it. So keep that in mind. You know, fine clay is going to be a little bit finer marring. Medium and heavier clay is going to induce slightly more marring because they're more aggressive clays. Now, there is an alternative. You can go traditional clay bar, which is my preferred method because, well, I'm old and your music sucks and get off my lawn. But you can also go clay mitt or clay towel, which do have their advantages, but again, I prefer the clay bar, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. So now that we've covered the what about the why do we use clay bar? The short answer, to exfoliate the paint, but there's a longer, more in-depth answer. If our goal is ultimate gloss and also a ceramic coating, we have to ensure that we've removed all the embedded contaminants from this paint. The thing is, if I don't clay this car and I got all these contaminants and then I put a buffer on it, well, I'm gonna pick up those contaminants with my buffing pad and I'm gonna spread those all over and cause even more marring. So I wanna remove those contaminants to make that polishing stage more effective. Also, when it comes to a ceramic coating, if we want the as advertised performance of a ceramic coating, we have to ensure that there are no contaminants that are gonna hinder that adhesion. So if there's anything in between your clear coat and your ceramic coating, when you're trying to lay that ceramic coating down, that's gonna hinder adhesion. So again, let's use the clay to remove all these surface contaminants before we proceed into our paint correction. So now on to the when do I use a clay bar? Now, as far as your process, you're gonna start with your wash bay. The clay bar process is usually considered part of your wash bay prep. So again, you're gonna bring in the car, you're going to wash the car, you're going to dry the car, and then we go into the clay bar. Following the clay bar, then we go to our paint correction and finally our protection step, whether that be some sort of sealant or ceramic coating to follow. What is our ultimate goal? Now, if my end goal is ultimate gloss, or if my end goal is a ceramic coating, in both those cases, we really want to do a clay bar treatment. And the reason is this. Number one, if I want the as advertised performance of whatever nanotechnology, ceramic coating you're gonna put on top of it, I want to ensure that we are as close to virgin clear coat as possible. And a clay bar is one of the most effective ways to remove surface contaminants from your glass or your paint. Number two, if your goal is ultimate gloss, what are mirrors? Mirrors are flat. They reflect light at a constant angle. If I want that same kind of reflectivity out of my paint, I want to ensure that paint is flat like a mirror. So that means, again, I don't want texture. I want smooth. How do we get smooth? Clay bar. Now what about the where? Where do I use a clay bar on my vehicle? Basically any glossy, smooth surface. So if it's glossy paint, yes, we want a clay bar. Glossy glass, yes, we want a clay bar. Should you have an older classic, you know, something with chrome bumpers or polished aluminum, something like that? Yes, those highly polished, highly finished metal surfaces can also be clayed to remove those surface contaminants. When do I want to use a clay bar? You've noticed I've been holding this little packing bag. You can also go get a cellophane or whatever you want, but I know when I have to use a clay bar is by using the Baggie test. So paint feels not great, also kind of dirty, but if I really want to get an idea of what this paint feels like, if it feels smooth to the touch, which a lot of times paint will, put your hand in this oh dear Lord. Now this feels like 1500 grit sandpaper. I mean, just to the touch, it's smooth. I can feel like some little things on there, but again, the Baggie test tells me everything that my eyes do not. And this tells me, oh, horrible contamination, not smooth. Because after all, folks, remember, what is smooth? Smooth is gloss. Because what's a mirror? Mirror is flat, reflects light at a constant angle. If we want that same kind of gloss out of our paint, we want to make sure the surface is flat like a mirror so it can reflect light and give us that oh so satisfying glow. When do we not want to use a clay bar? On anything like textured plastic. You know, so if you're talking up here on these plastic trim parts, this is not something I want to use clay on. That is not glossy, that is not smooth. Matte Audi RS6, not glossy, not smooth, very bad for clay bars. So it's time to get to the action. Here's the how do I use a clay bar? Now, first of all, an average clay bar, something like this, you should be able to use on, approximately 4 to 6 cars. Go ahead and open up your clay and you'll notice that it is malleable. So what you're gonna wanna do is rip off a piece. You can use the whole clay bar if you wanted to and just keep on folding it inside itself. But my personal preference is to just rip off a chunk and then I can save the rest. I can just kind of pack it back into the cellophane and save it for my next car. Kind of just work with it a little bit. The heat from your hands and the action of working it will make it even more malleable. And you just basically want to get it kind of flat like a pancake. So I'm just gonna keep on working it. Oops, almost dropped it on the floor. This reminds me, what happens if you drop your clay? The answer to that question, garbage. This is garbage if it hits the ground. So just remember that, keep hands on it. So anyway, get your clay nice and flat. I don't want to take the clay and start trying to, this is not going to work real well. This is why we need a clay lube. Now, we have Dr. Beasley's clay spray, but personally, I actually prefer our prep wash. So if I wanted to simplify my process and skip over having to wash and dry the car, I can just simply spray down the surface and give it a quick wipe to make sure I got all that kind of loose grit and grime off the car. But now, if I want to use prep wash as a clay lubricant, a lot of times what I will actually suggest, especially if you're in a more arid climate, you cut prep wash with water 1-to-1 and it makes a really, really great clay lube. So anyway, simple process. We want to mist the panel. This is our lubrication here. And then I'm gonna take my clay and I'm gonna run it back and forth. Now, you'll notice I'm not going Mr. Miyagi style on this. I am going in long, straight lines. I do not wanna go Mr. Miyagi on it because again, I'm trying to limit the kind of spider webbing and marring that Mr. Miyagi style can induce. If I'm in longer straight lines, it just works a bit better. And if you feel it's starting to get a little grabby on you, just put more of your clay lube. And if we look, you can see the contaminants that we're pulling off the surface. All these little black specks in there, whatever that is, all this in there. I mean, this is all surface contamination. And these are all things that would hinder the adhesion of a ceramic coating. And these are also things that make our glossy cars look a little bit less glossy. If you have a fair amount of contamination in your clay, what you want to do is fold it over to the inside and then pat it back down again, and now we have a new side of clay. So again, get my lube down, I can go back and forth and pick up all these contaminants that are on the surface. And another thing nice about using the prep wash is it does have that cleanability. So Ethan, if you actually kind of come up in this area right here, you can actually see how dirty that prep wash is. So that's, again, I'm helping clean a lot of these contaminants off the surface because that's the name of the game, to get the surface as clean and smooth as possible. And then I just wipe it up. And then you just continue the process around the whole car. You know, remember, we are inducing some micro-marring when we use our clay. So I'm not gonna be surprised that I'm gonna see a lot more now for twofold. Number one, when I'm using the action of the clay and I'm inducing, but also I'm using my prep wash. This is a 100% inorganic formulation. It is only stripping off. This has no oils, no fatty acids, no nothing that can serve as a filler or a gloss enhancer, nothing that's gonna hinder the adhesion of a ceramic coating. That's why this is an ideal product, not only to use as its intended purpose as a preparatory surface cleanser, but also as a clay lube. Now, let's have the ultimate test and see the difference between now our clayed side and our unclayed side of the hood. All right, so to the touch, definitely nice and smooth compared to where I didn't. Oh, this is awful, but now let's try it in the Baggie test. But I'm gonna try something with you guys. Let's see. I don't know if this is gonna work. Well, I guess we'll see in post-production if you guys can hear that, but it is unbelievably smoother on this side. So when it's smooth, smooth is glossy, smooth is also a surface that you're going to be able to get that most durable possible bond of that ceramic coating to follow. Now, let's say we've completed the entire process of the car and you want to save the clay that we didn't use. Now that you've opened it up, a great way to save clay lube, again, you can use the same cellophane or just grab a plastic sandwich bag. Grab some of your clay lube and give it a little spray just to kind of keep it wet and moist. That'll help it not dry out or fall apart on you. The part that you are using, generally, I'm going to toss this. If you think it's still good, you didn't use much of it, I would probably put it in a separate. I'm certainly not taking used clay and putting it back with my unused clay, but if you think your clay you've been using is still usable, go ahead and save it, Don't waste it if you don't have to. One other thing I did want to bring up when it comes to lubrications for your clay. Like I said, we have our dedicated clay spray. You can go the prep wash route as well. There's a lot of other at-home solutions out there. Many people use degreasers, and there's just one thing I want to mention about using a degreaser and clay. A high pH degreaser is actually going to cause these resins to break down. I would be cautious walking down that path. I would stick to either a dedicated clay lubricant or go some prep wash, and you can do that. Or even, like I said, if you're in a more arid climate, cut it 1-to-1 with some water. Of course, water sans minerals, so either a DI or a reverse osmosis or distilled water, but cut it with some water and you'll be good to go. I think that completes our clay bar video, folks. So again, I do want to thank you for joining us here at the Overflow Detail Bay in Simon's Detail, just adjacent to the Dr. Beasley's clean room. I am the Director of Success, Chris Racana, and I do want to remind you all to please help me educate America. If you are driving in the left lane and you're not passing anyone, it's time to move over to the right. So remember, everybody, left lane for passing, middle lane for cruising, and the right lane is for entering and exiting the expressway. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate you. Drive safely.